Welcome to Godot Unscripted, a podcast on the Godot ecosystem. Dear listeners, today we have a guest all the way from the land down under, where women grow, men plunder, and there's thunder for Godot. Nathan is a skilled developer of many years who's been creating games and art for a long time. He's also created several tools, the most popular of which is Dialogue Manager. Now, he's working towards his first commercial Steam release with Bravest Coconut. Nathan, how the hell are you?
I'm pretty good. How the hell are you, as we say down here?
Doing pretty well as well. I gave you a small introduction, but I'm wondering if you could give one for yourself.
No, I think you got it pretty good. Yeah, working on Bravest Coconut, a classic adventure game in the style of like Super Nintendo Zelda, but throwing in some point-and-click adventure elements, like Monkey Island, Day of the Tentacle kind of stuff.
Oh, okay, it's pretty cool. I really want to talk more about that, but first, we're going to go all the way to the beginning. Can you remember where your interest in games started?
I think it started, we played some friends when I was really young. We played it wasn't D&D, but it was like some knockoff of D&D, which I cannot remember the name of it. But playing stuff like that was always interesting, and then starting to try and make our own like maps for it and our own little campaigns, which looking back now were probably terrible, but like just having an interest in creating a world or creating stories within that world was always fascinating to me.
And how did you transition from actual pen and paper to the more digital side?
Well, we didn't really grow up with a console or anything for a while, and then we got a PlayStation 1 back forever ago and Crash Bandicoot, and I think that changed lots of stuff, like playing the original Crash Bandicoot, and then I think Final Fantasy 7 back in the day.
Oh, so good.
And then just seeing that sort of stuff, just like, oh man, it'd be so good to make this kind of thing.
Right? I feel the same way. So you have this urge now to create. How do you express that?
Doing a lot of research, like just reading books and stuff and going, yeah, I could probably never do this stuff. Like, the tooling obviously existed back then, but it seems so far out of reach. And then fast forward to, well, years ago now, but years after that, the tools are now pretty good. So it's very accessible now, which is really cool. And then obviously with things like YouTube that obviously didn't exist when I was a kid, but like it's so easy to learn this stuff now, which is cool.
Yeah. I'm wondering, when did you create your first game project?
First video game, I made like board games and like sort of crappy campaigns for, like I said, that sort of adventure-y game thing before. But like making a video game, I think was in... Oh, I know what it was. It was in primary school, actually, using Excel. So Excel macros and stuff, I think. So using the cells themselves, I shrunk right down to as small as they could be and did like kind of a precursor to like pixel art kind of thing, where you just fill a cell with a color. And then I was using like macro buttons and stuff to just jump around a giant spreadsheet as like a choose your own adventure thing. And that was painstaking. And then not long after that, I found, I think it was Click and Play or the Games Factory, which I think still exists as like Multimedia Fusion. But back then it was pretty basic. But yeah, I made like a clone of Frogger, where you're a little cat going back and forward across a busy road and just keep going until the inevitable happened. But yeah, that was a learning experience. Actually, I remember that, and then Flash back in the day, like having a bit of a tinkering with Flash, as I think a lot of game devs these days probably had an origin of a similar thing, playing with Flash and ActionScript.
So you actually made Flash games as well?
I made that same game in Flash, I think, as a learning experience. So I used the Games Factory to make our version, and then when Flash came around, we had it at school, so we could tinker with it, and I made the same game again. And then it got banned from the network because everyone kept playing it.
Oh no, but also famous, nice.
Yep.
Is there anywhere where we can find this game nowadays?
No, this is long gone in the forgotten to the annals of time.
No, lost media.
It probably wasn't a very good game when you look back. It was more just because people were playing it because they were starved of other games because the network was pretty locked down. But if you made it yourself and hosted it, like all the students had like their own little home directory that could technically run a web app, or like it was already a web app. But if you had like a HTML file in your home directory, it would be served as like a web page. So I just put it there and linked to it from the HTML page, and that's how people got it on the network.
At least it worked. And I'm also like I'm not even sure it was a good game, but it's just like the nostalgia of seeing like the first things you did and the memories that come back with it, right?
Yeah, I think my memories of it are probably better than the game itself.
Yeah. I'm wondering about how your journey started evolving. If you were already doing those games when you were so young, what came next?
Just getting into software in general, I think. We didn't really do games as a specific thing for a while, and then I can't think back, probably a few years back, we started doing like hackathons, like kind of like game jams, but they weren't specifically for
Mm.
games, but we were making games in the hackathon because it's easy for the judges to see the merit of it straight away. Like if you do a normal hackathon, you're sort of making an app or something. You kind of have to tell people what it is and like sort of justify its existence to get points and like for people to understand it. Whereas if you make a game, it's kind of immediately interesting. So we started winning some hackathons just because we were making games, and
Mm.
like the games themselves are pretty good, but like as I said, it's easy to win people across when it's something fun. And then after we won a few of those, I was just like, this is something we could probably do more of. So started doing that.
Of course. When you say we, who's we?
So depending on the hackathon, we was generally me, my wife Lil, my brother Ben, and either Lil's brother Taz, who like we're all software engineers, or another friend of mine Jaap in the
Oh.
Netherlands. So yeah, everyone's a software engineer. So making games was kind of like a fun change for the normal sort of work.
That sounds, yeah, really cool. Around what year was this with the hackathons?
Good question. 2017, I remember, was one of them. I have, I think, two of them up on my itch.
Yeah,
So
the definitely ending story.
yeah, that was one of them. Yeah, so that was hand painted within the 48-hour window that we had to make the game.
Oh my god. And you did the painting?
I did some of them, and Lil did some of the other ones. So I did a lot of the backgrounds, and Lil did the character art for that.
Oh, nice. When did your interest with art start? Also at the same time as D&D?
No, I've always been doing like kind of crappy art. I think for a while. Lil's a professional artist, so she's real good at like painting or whatever. I'm kind of just a sketcher with watercolors and stuff. But then getting into when was this? Probably 20 or just after the hackathons actually. I used to work at the national
Mm.
broadcaster here in Australia, ABC News, and one of the stories we did was we did it in the form of a news game, and that had some pixel art. So I just sat there and just did tons and tons of pixel art and started getting kind of good at that. So that was the start of that kind of art, anyway.
No way. Where can I see this? We're in the news?
Good question. I think archive.org. So the ABC News site changed in the last couple of years, and some of the older stories that were interactive don't really work anymore. But
Oh
the
no.
archive.org caught it, I think. So it's under the name The Amazon Race. So it was like the news game was like what it's like to work at an Amazon fulfillment center.
Oh, I can already imagine what the game was like.
Yeah, it was interesting as well. Actually, that was when I was sort of introduced to Ink, the dialogue language system, which is one of the inspirations for Dialogue Manager, actually, because I had to write a wrapper for Ink to make it work in the system that we'd built.
Mm, okay. Yeah, that's the next topic I want to tackle because the Definitely Ending story, if I'm not mistaken, was created in React,
Yeah,
right?
it was. So the hackathon, you actually had to use React. That's why we used React for that.
Ah, but that's not the language you specialize in.
Well, it's for a day job. I've been using React for ages. Getting nostalgic back then, like I started using React before it was version 1.
Those were the days before it went down the toilet. No, I'm kidding.
But also not far from the truth.
I just parrot what the developers at my job say. So, how did you start transitioning from these hackathons to an actual game engine? And which engine was it first?
So just after that, we started using. Actually, I don't know if we ever used it for. Oh no, we did too. So the other game I think I have up on itch. I can't remember if it's still there, but Pixel Beach was using the Phaser engine just because it was JavaScript, so it was easy for everyone to pick up. And then I started building like a wrapper around it because it's not really an engine; it's like a framework. So it's just a bunch of stuff provided. And I started building an engine around it, and then got to the point where I'm like, even if this gets really good, to port this to console, or even say the Apple TV or whatever, because we were all iOS and stuff back then. But porting it would be an absolute nightmare because it's all JavaScript. It's not impossible, but it would be very difficult. So I'm like, and then looking around at other stuff that would make that better and more professional. And then I came across X and A, seeing how like Stardew Valley and games like that, and actually especially Celeste and Towerfall had been built, and they open sourced their framework that they built on top of that. I forget what it's called, Monocle, I think. Anyway, having read through that top to bottom and sort of building some like more of what's it called? Man, for some reason I have the MVC in my head, but that's from the app development world. Oh, what's it called? And ACS. Oh man, I don't know why that was so hard to remember. But yeah, building an ECS on top of Monogame, with loosely sort of based on how some of the Monocle stuff worked. So I built a whole engine on top of Monogame for that, and then started building a game just to test it out. And then that got to a point where it was too complicated and was going to take forever, and I wasn't really that interested in it. So I started building the Bravest Coconut, well, what was the precursor to Bravest Coconut back then. And then, it got to the point with this engine that I'd made where it was more work maintaining the engine than what I could actually put into the game itself. So every time I needed something done, like I want to make a map, like I'd have to use Tiled. But then if I wanted to have something a bit more interesting going on, I'd then have to make my own thing that then read Tiled, and then it's like an intermediate middleware. And it just got to be an absolute pain. So I just started looking around at other stuff. I stumbled across Heartbeast's video tutorials, as like a lot of Godot people probably in the same boat. Stumbled across that, was like, I'll give it a try. I have like a few hours, so yeah, did that. Absolutely loved it. Looked at the license. License was great, because people were always talking about Unity back then. I was maybe considering it for like a little bit, and then just read, this is like years before obviously Unity started getting real borderline air quotes evil. Like even reading through the license back then was a bit unsettling. So then reading through like Godot, like you don't really have to read very far to see how open the whole thing is. And at that time people were talking about like there's no support for consoles, so that was kind of a little concerning, but I figured like by the time I finish this game, console support's going to exist, so I wasn't overly concerned, and that other people were already working on it, so I didn't have to worry too much about it. But so then I started using Godot, and that was Godot 3.4 I think, or 3.3, maybe 3.4 hadn't come out yet, so that'll give you an idea of how long ago this was. And then I've been updating it as new Godots come out with a big rewrite. Once 4 was in release candidate, I think, I rewrote Bravest Coconut again. Like copied as much as I could across, but took it as an opportunity to clean up like all of the crap that, like as I'd been learning how Godot works, and a lot of it wasn't in like how I wanted it to be, code-wise and clean and structure and all that sort of stuff. So Godot 4 was a good excuse to take what I'd learned and kind of rebuild it again. And obviously because I already knew how it all worked, it was pretty quick to port it over. It was like a couple of weeks and it was all working again in 4 and nice and clean again.
It's crazy to me that you say it was quick, just a couple of weeks. I'm like, what, weeks? But then again, I imagine it is quick, right? For the work.
Yeah, well, you kind of know how it all works. So I just like porting it from GDScript 1 to GDScript 2, there were tools that could kind of do it for you, but I don't really in general trust automated tooling for that sort of stuff. So, and as I said, it was a good excuse to clean out the craft, so I kind of wanted to do it manually. And I feel like doing it manually for some stuff is quicker anyway, because if you let the automated thing do it, then you still have to go and fix a bunch of stuff and you're not quite sure what it did. So yeah, doing it manually I think worked out quite well, which is probably why it was quick. And as I said, because a lot of it I'd abstracted into my own bespoke plugins, so that was pretty straightforward porting them over as well. Yeah. So yeah, as I said, the whole thing wasn't super complicated. It was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be, and GDScript 2 made that nice too, because like you could write things a lot more expressively.
It is, isn't it? I really like Godot for that reason. Before we get into the game, I would like to ask you about the tooling side of things, because you've talked about a little bit about Bravest Coconut and how that begun and continued. When did you decide to start building those tools? Yeah, like input helper, I think it's called.
Right, yeah, I did that one first, actually. I forgot about that. Man, the timeline, even I forget when I did stuff.
No.
I actually don't remember why I made input helper. I think because I wanted to have... So actually, I vaguely remember probably something along the lines of how it came about. I remember reading a thing from Eric Baroni ages ago about his biggest regrets in the architecture of Stardew Valley, and the two things he said were input was a problem because it was never designed to work on consoles. It was only ever supposed to be like a mouse driven game, or keyboard mouse, or whatever you want to say. And the other one was I think translations was a problem or the dialogue was a problem as well. So there were the two things I wanted to make sure was there from the start. Was like input was solved and like dialogue and translations and all that was a solved problem as well. So yeah, I think because input it was super easy to do, so I think that might be why I did it first because I didn't know anything about making plugins in Godot, and I think I stumbled across Emmy's video about just making basic stuff and gave it a whirl, input helper, and away it went. Dialog Manager's a slightly different story, I think, because I think I did it. I had a tool that I'd made back in the monogame days for dialogue. It was really crap and not really the same thing, but it's like, as I said, trying to solve that problem of dialogue and translations and all that. And then Mr. Elliptic was running, what was it, the Godot add-on jam? I don't know if they've done it since then. I think there's only been one of them. But yeah, a few years back, that was a thing, and I figured that would be a good chance to port that tool, because it was a generic tool. It wasn't for Godot, it was for Monogame originally, so it dumped out resource files, as in not Godot resource, as in like .NET resource. I forget what the other name for those is. But yeah, anyway, the add-on jam was a good excuse to port that to Godot. And so I spent the week porting it over and improving a bunch of stuff and learning how to make an editor plugin. That was that. And I think I came second from that. So that was kind of cool.
Hype, let's go.
I was going to say something that I was super excited about when I had no idea why I had a sudden spike in traffic. I can't remember if I even had a YouTube back then. I don't think I'd started doing YouTube yet. But I had a spike in the repo, I think I noticed, and then looked up the Game From Scratch YouTube channel. I'd covered it. And like, oh, that was cool because I've been a big fan of his for a while. I'm like watching all his videos, and then I didn't even notice that he talked about mine until a few hours later. Because obviously, being in Australia, you wake up to things.
Yeah.
You don't really see it when it happens.
That's why I wanted to ask, like, how has the evolution and growth of Dialogue Manager impacted you?
It's definitely been a driving force in building out a little community. So, like, I have a Discord and the YouTube channel and all that. A lot of that's been driven by the add-ons, which is good. But it's also like I like giving back to the community as well, because obviously Godot being free, you get a lot of stuff for free. So it's just nice to sort of share that around a little bit, and tooling and stuff like that is it's stuff that people need, like especially like we probably do realize, but like something I didn't realize until well after putting it out is like just how common the need is for this sort of stuff. Like once it's already built, you kind of feel like you look back and like, oh, that was pretty easy to do. But then it is, if you had to start that from scratch, it's momentous.
Of course. I mean, I don't consider it easy at all, right? I'm not a developer in my day job. So for me,
right.
I really respect all those tools and add-ons and plugins. It just seems so complicated to me, and I really appreciate the effort that the people put into it that benefits the rest of the community. Like you, thank you.
Yeah, it's good to see. I like seeing all the other stuff people are up to as well. It's just fascinating.
What about puzzle dependencies? This was another one that you had.
So that one, that's probably a bit more niche, I think, because people seem to mistake it for a quest system, which it isn't. It's specifically just meant as a tool for visualizing puzzle dependencies. So if you're familiar with Ron Gilbert and like Monkey Island and those sort of games back in the day, actually, he has a blog post about it, which I think still exists, about the problem with like adventure games and all that, and the birth of the puzzle dependency chart to guarantee that you don't have any dead ends. So you basically work backwards from the solution to a problem, and then it sort of builds out this giant tree of like keys and doors, almost like the puzzle, and then how you get to the pieces to solve the puzzle, and how everything is intertwined throughout the story. Anyway, and so yeah, he talked about that, and playing around with some of the other like just graph tools was interesting to try and visualize these things, but I kind of like the idea of it being in the project. So I was using Dia at one point because I'm a big fan of sort of using open source tools whenever possible, and Dia's an open source chart builder or graph or whatever you want to call it, a diagram builder. It's fine, but it was kind of cumbersome to use and keep the files within the project. So I figured it'd be easier just to have a tinker with Godot's graph node stuff and make a custom plugin. And that I don't remember. I think I just finished building that just as Godot 4 came out. So then I had to like basically rebuild it again for Godot 4, which was kind of more painful than any other transition to Godot 4 because the graph node stuff changed a lot. And at that point, I don't think I'd actually figured the undo redo stuff out. That was probably the more painful part. But yeah, anyway, so after I got that working, it was a lot easier to use in a project then. Like it just felt nicer to be able to to have my puzzle dependencies in the project and in source control. So anywhere I have, because I kind of do work on multiple computers, so it's nice that when I check out the most recent copy somewhere, I've got like everything I need to see that stuff as well.
Nice. Oh, all right. I think we are now ready to talk about Bravest Coconut. Tell me, where did the idea come from? Why the name? Why a cat?
Well, Coconut is our actual cat in real life. She's so when we went to go rescue a cat, we told the agency, it was like, oh, just a lazy cat's fine, because we had an apartment at the time, and they're like, okay, well, we have exactly the cat. So we went to go meet the Coconut at her foster parents' place, and as soon as we got there, she just went meh, and then walked up to us and just sort of plomped. So like, yep, that's it. So yeah, we took her home, and yeah, so she's the world's laziest cat. Like, she's less lazy now, but like she was lazy back then. And I just thought it was funny, the idea of the super lazy cat like going on an adventure and doing very unlazy things.
And this is being developed only by you, or who else is Little Nebula?
Little Nebula is just me. So I set up the studio as an actual company, because you kind of need to do that for some of the grants here in Australia to get funding. But also it's an easy setup to have everything be owned and controlled by like an entity. Just makes it easier for like accounting and everything. Just a boring answer for that, but yeah, it's just me.
Oh, nice. But you also got a grant from the government then?
Did I? No, I haven't yet, but you just have to do that before you even apply.
Ah, okay. So you're gonna quit your job soon then?
No. The grants aren't that big.
Oh my god. How does the timeline for the game look like? When are you planning to release, and how do you develop new features with that in mind?
Well, I'm hoping to release next year, maybe early next year. So I'm full steam ahead on the demo at the moment, because I made the Steam page a while ago as well. I had to have the Steam page up to be part of some festivals and stuff that were here. So I've had 2 public places where people have been able to come and play like a little loop of the game. It's not really a demo, it's like a loop that's specifically made for whatever it's for. So we had what's called the Queensland Games Festival here, which is, Queensland is the state that I'm in. So it was a bunch of local developers showing their games to the public, and so I made like a little loop within the world of Bravest Coconut, but it's not the part of the actual game. It's just like in this little loop, you're kind of on your way to, say, my house to come and play the game, and then the adventure happens on the way there, if that makes sense, like a self-referential kind of thing, which is kind of funny. People love that, even though that's not actually going to be in the game. And then for another one, so we had Supernova, which is like a pop culture expo here, and it's like Comic-Con, if you know what Comic-Con is, but very, very small version of that. And then this year was the first, or last year I should say, it's now 2025. So late last year was the first time that Supernova had indie games there. So I was one of the games that was picked to be part of that. I made like a modifications to the loop. So the loop was now you're on your way to Supernova to play the game. So then the adventure happens on your way to Supernova. And people love that, because the ending is like you literally rock up at Supernova, and I'd drawn the final area to look exactly like what our setup was, even down to the game that we had next to us was there as well. Because I looked up ahead to work out who was going to be next to us and sort of guessed what their setup would look like. Anyway, and yeah, so that was cool. But yeah, so taking what I learnt from the public playing that, like just watching people, what they struggled with, what they liked, what I need to change and stuff like that, and putting that towards making the demo for Steam, because you only get one real shot at your like the first launch of the demo. So I want to make sure that's polished, and then getting that in the hands of streamers and stuff to try and, I don't know, get the word out. So that's what the plan is at the moment, and then from that, yeah, work towards an actual release of the game sometime early next year, hopefully.
Nice. But these are some genius marketing moves. Are you involved deeply in the game scene there?
No, I didn't even know it existed till not that long ago. Like, because I'm kind of remote where I am at the moment. I'm about an hour, probably over an hour drive to the nearest like place. Like, so I'm not sure how familiar you are with Australia at all, but there's a place called Brisbane, which is like the capital city of Queensland. That's about an hour and a bit away from where I am here. Where all these places are and all the meetups and the game dev scene and all that's a little bit away from here. So yeah, it's kind of hard to know it existed until I heard someone. Oh no, it was back when I was at ABC News actually, because I was doing a story just before I left there and interviewing a bunch of people at PAX, the Penny Arcade Expo. We have one here in Australia, and interviewing some developers there, one of which was from Brisbane. Actually, it was Ren from Witchbeam Do you know unpacking?
Oh yeah, yeah, I do.
Yeah, so Ren, I was interviewing Ren, and I just happened to offhandedly mention that it's a shame that there's not much of a scene up in Brisbane because everything is in Melbourne, which is the hub of kind of the indie game stuff here in Australia in general. And she said, "Oh no, there's actually like a big thing up in Brisbane," and I was surprised to hear that. So then I asked a few other people and looked into it, and was like, "Oh, there actually is a thing up here, and it's actually thriving, which is cool." Because yeah, like not being in Brisbane itself, you don't really see this stuff. Just making an effort to go along to this stuff, and yeah, it's been great. Like because you take along like a build of your game each month. Like there's a monthly meetup. You take along a build and get people to play it, and a few people there have had massive success with their games, which is cool to sort of get like industry titans a little bit like playing your game and giving you advice, which is cool.
Of course, that's how you get insight into those things. And I find it so funny. You were like, "There's no community, everybody." Nathan, we were just wondering why you didn't go. Of course there is.
Yeah, well, this is before I was sort of in that world at all, really. I was sort of an outsider looking in, trying to pretend I had anything to do with anything as part of the ABC News team.
Now you're one of us. One of us. One of us.
Well, definitely trying to be anyway. And then that's like going back to the add-ons as well. It's like that's kind of one of the reasons I feel like that's valuable as well. Like it gave me a way to sort of almost buy my way into the industry with goodwill.
I wanted to ask you now about challenges that you faced during your development of Bravest Coconut. What do you struggle with?
I think probably the same thing everyone struggles with is scope and keeping myself reined in because there's always an idea for a thing. Like the best way to deal with that, I guess, is to just time box stuff and just feature spike it like you would in normal software. I guess you kind of feature spike something, just build a cut down version of it enough just to test out the idea and don't put too much time into it. But it's always hard sometimes where you're like, oh, I just want to make the art look a little better. So I think I've redrawn everything in the game probably 4 times now.
Oh, no.
For different reasons, not just because I felt like it. Like there were legitimate reasons for some of it, but yeah, it's like I think scope's the biggest challenge. But having the festivals and like having to have a build to take along to these things, I think was another good reason to cut that back as well, because you have a fixed time that you have to meet, a fixed kind of thing that you have to bring along. So it makes you realize like, oh, what don't I need? So you start cutting stuff out until it's just what you need to show people. And yeah, I think that's been good too. Like having a fixed time, because obviously, like with release dates, you can kind of, especially as an indie, and especially when it's only one person, you can kind of make up time frames and not stick to them. Whereas stuff like that, you kind of have to stick to that timeline, which has been good.
Yeah, absolutely. It pushes you. You just need that push sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. And it does end up with a pretty good product too, because like once you hit that deadline and you show it to a couple of people, well then you've got something you can build on. Like until you've kind of got that closed loop, you don't really know anything. It's all speculative. So it's good having some, because obviously it's easier to edit than it is to create. So once you've created the whole thing, well then it's all just making it better after that point.
Yeah, you need that feedback early. What's your creative process like? Because I see, for example, there's skeletons in the game. Why did you choose skeletons over, let's say, black cats or something like that?
Mainly because I didn't really want to have like killing animals and stuff in it. Like so many games have like, even monsters like are still animals most of the time in these games. I didn't really want to have like killing random animals because it just seems so arbitrarily violent. I'm not sure how to articulate it, but yeah, I didn't want to have that, so I made them skeletons. And I know that's kind of a cheap thing to do because lots of stuff has skeletons, but I kind of wanted to have mine a little bit different where like the skeletons all have like, not a job, but like they're wearing like uniforms and stuff. So like there's skeletons in there that are like, they kind of, it helps sell what they do as well, like give you a bit of a telegraph as to what their abilities are. So there's one that's bouncing around on a pogo stick. There's one where it's like wearing like a football jersey and it's got a helmet, so you kind of know that it's like a bit tougher and it's like maybe he's going to charge you or something. There's like a little pirate looking one that throws like comical kind of bombs at you. There's one that I haven't really shown anywhere yet that's got like a little hard hat, and it does like, you find them in the caves and they're like, they dig and stuff, and things like that. So like it's like it's not just all the same skeleton. It's like they have a bit of variation in what they can do and what they look like to make it a bit more interesting. But yeah, the other thing I was thinking as well is like robots, because robots are like, I don't know, it's the same as skeletons really. It's like it feels less violent to me, so maybe I'll have a bit where it's like robots or something. I'm not really sure.
I like that. That's interesting. It's a very unique perspective.
The whole game has it's not quite the same as like Undertale where you can choose to not fight stuff. Like, well, actually it's like that but less deliberate. Like in this, like you can basically beat the whole game without fighting anything, and even a few people in the public sort of demo-y thing noticed that some of the times it's a lot easier just to run straight past stuff so you don't have to engage. Like it's like that on purpose. Like you're not supposed to fight everything.
That they were speedrunning already.
Well, it wasn't even a speedrun. It was more just like it was difficult if you engage. So it was kind of teaching you that you don't have to engage with everything. Like sometimes it's better off not even doing that, just run past. So yeah, it's like parts like that. And then there's like, say, bosses, for example. You might fight a boss, or if you can dodge their attacks for say like 10 minutes, the boss gives up, and that's like the passive run through maybe. And there's like an achievement for that kind of thing.
Okay, gotcha. I like that. What's your favorite part about the game?
Probably biased towards like dialogue heavy stuff, but I kind of like the dialogue. Like a lot of people comment on Coco's dialogue in particular because she's the whole game is very fourth wall breaking. Like it's very aware that it's a game, and so Coco has some like it's not even sarcasm. It's like sassy dialogue. But she kind of like comments like what you're probably thinking at certain parts in the game, and just sort of points out stuff that would only make sense in a video game. So yeah, I kind of like writing that stuff, which is it amuses me anyway, and it's good to see people like it when they play it.
Oh, nice! I'm looking forward to see it. Now, what's something that you would like to improve about the game, like really, really bad? And don't say the art again.
No, I'm not going to touch that again. So the last time speaking of the art, the last time I changed it was because I realized my resolution wasn't going to work very well on a Steam Deck / like the Switch because they're the same resolution, and so I had to rejig my tile set to scale to the two different resolutions without having half pixels. Anyway, the thing it's not super bad, but the thing I want to improve on is the music. Like I do all the music, and I'm not bad at it, but I could definitely be a lot better at it, and it's something I keep sort of putting off. Like I wrote a couple of themes for stuff, and it's the same themes I've been using in everything, so it'd be nice to sit down and actually do it properly, like do another pass on the music.
Nice, yeah. So you do the music yourself as well. Jesus, where do you find time for all these things?
It's amazing what you can get done when you don't have much time. So when you kind of have the time constraint, I guess you're very focused on what you have to get done at certain times.
Right. No time for nonsense. Just get down and get shit done.
Yeah, basically. As I was saying, like when you've got all the time in the world, you use all the time in the world. It's like, what is it? I forget the name of the principle where it's like the time needed fits the time allowed. A task
always takes exactly the amount of time that is allotted to it.
That you've been given. Yeah, that principle, whatever that's called. Yeah.
That's fair. What are you looking forward to?
Looking forward to having the demo out, I think, at the moment. Like, just looking forward to the reception to see if people like it or how it resonates with people as well. And just, like I said before with the streamers, like, just watching people play it is always fun. So, like, watching people play it that aren't standing right in front of me would be great.
So they're not pressured to like it?
Well, you'd be surprised how brutal some people can be even when you're standing right next to them. There was some interesting advice I got from different people. Like, you don't have to take all the advice on board. Like, some stuff is better than others, and it's like you get a lot more from just watching people than listening to what they say. But yeah, like just seeing people that it's not even that I don't know them because I don't know a lot of people that were playing it at these festivals, but like people that aren't right in front of you, they just randomly picked it up. Like they're not there because you're there at a festival, they picked it up because they just saw it on Steam and they just started playing it.
Yeah. When people give this feedback, for me, I always keep that in mind that people are really good at identifying problems, but not necessarily good at finding solutions. So if they say, I don't know, I should do more damage here, you're like, okay, there's a problem behind that. What is the actual problem and what would be a good solution? But just implementing what they say, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, so my background is in, user experience. So like those sort of studies and the research in that on stuff. And yeah, it's like watching people, and like, so when people explain something to you, you're looking at what they're actually trying to tell you that they don't even know what they're trying to tell you, and just, finding the truth there. There's always a truth behind anything anyone says. It's the truth may not be what they think they're telling you.
Oh, you have a background in UX? I'm expecting great things from the game now. UX is like the greatest indicator for me of a quality in a game.
Well, hopefully, yeah. So like a lot of effort's gone into the the interface for like making stuff simple. Because like I was saying, like the point and click adventure stuff, but it's designed for a gamepad, so like that's a challenge in itself. So trying to simplify that to the most basic interactions. Like that was actually one of the things I took to Supernova that I changed, because Supernova is 3 days long. So after the first day, I took some of the learnings from that and like revised how some of the interactions work with your inventory. And then watching that be better for the next 2 days was rewarding. And just knowing that that's how, like working better than the initial thing I had in there for the first day. And thanks to Godot for like being so easy to make those big changes in like a couple of hours that night after the first day.
Yeah. God bless Godot. The fast startup as well.
Yeah, exactly. And not constantly crashing whenever you're trying to recompile anything.
No, it gives me nightmares. Nathan, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I have one last question for you. What advice would you like to give people out there listening to this podcast?
Just start. Like it's the whole. I forget who said it was. Start. Was it a year from now? You wish you started today. So if you're thinking of getting into any of this stuff, just do it.
Yeah. Better progress over perfection, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like I was saying before, it's a lot easier to edit than it is to create. So just get the create bit out of the way, and you can make it better.
Exactly. Oh my God, I have so much to say about that. All right. Thank you so much for everyone out there. That's a good note to end on. Anything else you would like to plug in? Your Instagram, your Pinterest.
I don't use Instagram. I don't use anything Meta. I have a Blue Sky, so I'm nathanhode.net on Blue Sky, and YouTube is nathan_hode. Or apart from that, wishlist Bravest Coconut.
On Steam, perfect. I will, of course, add those links in the description. All right, then thank you everyone who stopped by to listen today. This was Godot Unscripted. Cue free. Are you also like a pianist?
A little bit, yeah. As I was saying about the music, like I can do it. It's I'm not very good at it, so it's trying to get better at it. Like we bought a piano here and been slowly tinkering. My wife, probably gets more use out of it than I do at the moment.
But you at least get use out of it. That's really cool, man.
Oh, I have a shitty keyboard, as in like it's not a piano,
okay,
but it's
gotcha.
like an input device that looks like a piano. I don't know what to call it. Like I call it a keyboard, but when I say that, people get confused with like a typing keyboard. But yeah, I use that normally, but it has no output of its own. It only works as an input device. But yeah, it's like just tinkering away with that is slightly more cumbersome, but interesting.
Well, when is the demo coming out, by the way? So I can mark it on my calendar.
Good question. I got to make it first. So there's I've got all this kind of beats worked out. 'Cause it'll be the first part of the game that ends on like a cliffhanger, kind of. But as I was saying, it's like it's fourth wall breaking. So I'm debating whether or not to try to include some of the stuff that people liked in the public one. So I'm not quite sure how to include that, because it would mean that the demo is like you're playing as Coco trying to somehow get somewhere where you can play the demo, but I don't know how that would work if it's on Steam and like anywhere in the world, and like I don't know, I'm not quite sure how to incorporate that yet, whether I'll even try. But yeah, so I have all the story beats other than whether or not I want to include that, so now it's just a matter of putting it all together. So I'm hoping it'll be like April maybe, so a couple of months away. So yeah, no guarantees, but that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah. Okay, April. I'm looking forward to it.
Yep.
Disclaimer. And I would really like meeting you at a GodotCon if you can ever make it to one. I mean, I know you live in Australia, which is far away from everything, but maybe someday Godot.
Yeah, it's really hard to get anywhere. Every time I see all the people with all the photos, I'm like, I feel like I'm missing out. But like getting there is so hard. There is some funding. Like the government here is pretty good for funding games. So as I was saying before, I'm going for a grant at the moment. I don't know what my chances are, but you can get some funding to go to these conferences and stuff, which is kind of cool. So yeah, maybe one day.
I mean, even then, for me, it's just like the 16-hour travel time. I'm like,
on a plane, yeah, it gets like that. It's more to go to Berlin. Oh wait, no, Gamescom's Cologne. Where's GodotCon? Is that in Berlin?
It happened in Berlin this year, but it switches locations, and they're now doing 2 per year apparently. So
yeah, one of them's in America. I'm not going to America anytime soon.
one Boston, and let's hope the next one Europe, Berlin again. Hopefully, so I don't have to move. But otherwise, we'll see.